Thank you very much for joining this tutorial video on the X-ATC Chatter project that Stick and Rudder Studios is running. The purpose of this video is to share with you some of the tools you'll be using as a volunteer in collecting and editing the various ATC Chatter files and showing you how to submit them. So that's really what we're going to be trying to accomplish, okay, with this video today. So I think the very first thing that you're going to need to become familiar with is some of the tools that we'll be using for this project. And the basic processes, we'll be going to liveatc.net, searching around and finding some good archived recordings, downloading those, and then we'll be editing them with a free open source audio editing tool called Audacity. Audacity is what we're going to use to kind of break those clips into a full exchange between ATC and a pilot, clean them up a little bit, maybe edit them where we need to, and then save them into individual clip files, that we'll be doing. So the first thing we probably should do is get Audacity installed, and you can find Audacity pretty easily. There's actually a link to it, on the website page for the Chatter project. So here's the Audacity website, and this is the link, okay, that you would use to download Audacity. It's fairly straightforward to download and install, and in a few minutes I'm actually going to show you how you go through and use it. I've already got it installed, so I'm not going to bother downloading it and doing it again because it's pretty much already there. The other thing that you're going to need is a encoder for MP3s. Audacity can read MP3 files by default, but what it can't do by default is save the clips in MP3 format. And this is the way I'm going to want you to submit them because, frankly, I've got some tools for MP3s that allow me to do things like leveling all the volume on them so that all of the clips have roughly the same volume in the production files when we do it. So if you come over here to MP3 support, it'll basically bring you to this open source lame MP3 encoder that you're going to want to install, and you're going to want to use this link right here if you're on Windows. This install section, install and updating Audacity on Windows. And once you have this lame MP3 encoder incorporated into Audacity, then you'll be able to export your clips, okay, to MP3 format. Okay. So that's a little bit about Audacity. I encourage you to get that downloaded, play around with it a little bit, and that will kind of give you a feel for what that's all about. Now the next thing I want to show you is where you can get access to some sample files that I've generated, as well as a little bit of a discussion on what the structure is going to look like for these. So once you sign up, and one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get a Google account. It's free if you don't already have one. If you have a Gmail account, then you're already set up. But even if you have your email on Yahoo or something else, you can go ahead and sign up for a Google account. One of the tools we're going to be using in Google is a thing called Google Drive, and that's the way I'm going to share with you some of the sample files, as well as some of the directory structures that we're going to be using. It's also where you're going to submit your files when you've got them all done. And it's kind of like a file sharing kind of capability, but I can control the protections on it pretty carefully. So once you've got your Google account set up and you have an email that's associated with your Google account, what you're going to want to do is email me what that email address is, and then what I can do is go in and I can add you to the permissions on the various folders. So I'm going to give you an example here. I'm in Chrome at the moment, and I'm on my personal Gmail account, which I've shared folders to. And if we come over here and go to Google Drive, there is a thing over here called Shared with Me. and we can just come over here and click on that. And what you should see once I've added you to the share is you'll see a couple of folders here. One of them is ATC Chatter sample files and structures, and this is going to contain a few zip files that have got some sample files that you can listen to, and also it has the empty directory tree that we're going to use for populating the clips as you create them. This other folder here called ATC Chatter Submissions, this is where you're going to push up or copy the files that you've created so that I can capture them and incorporate them in the final production files. Now, one of the things we're going to do in the volunteer program is once you've submitted at least 100 high quality clips that I can accept that kind of meet the standards we're looking for, then what I'm going to do is give you access to the production files. So there will be another folder here called X-ATC Chatter Production Files. Once you've got that, you'll actually be able to download all of the files that have been submitted by, none of the ones I've worked on, but all of the other volunteers, and you'll be able to use them in Pilot to ATC. The other thing I'll do is once I've created the playback plugin, which I want to be able to do for those people who are not using something like Pilot to ATC to play back these chatter files, you'll get a free license for that once you've submitted at least 100 high quality files that I can use. Okay, so let's take a look at what's in here. So if I double click on this, you'll see that within the chatter sample files and structure there are two zip files. One is a sample.zip, which is going to contain some audio clips that I've already created to give you an idea of what they're supposed to sound like. And also there is this template tree, which is basically an empty directory tree that you're going to use for populating with your files. So first thing let's do is let's bring this down. So within Google Drive, all you have to do is click on it, and then over here on the right, you click on this, and then you just use this little download button up here at the top. It's going to scan for viruses, and it will download it, and it's done. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to my downloads directory. Here is the sample.zip file, and what I'm going to do is just extract this. Now I like to use 7-zip. It's a free zip utility. I'm sure most of you have whatever you like to use. This is my favorite, so I'm just going to unzip it and I'm going to extract it to a directory called sample. And if I open this up, you're going to see what the directory tree looks like. There's regions, and then I've got the regions broken up into these major areas of the world: Africa, Asia, Canada, Europe, Oceania, South America, and the United States. And the goal ultimately is that we'll have enough clips collected from these various areas that regardless of where you're flying, you'll be able to listen to chatter that is basically appropriate for the area that you're flying in. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you, this is going to take a long time to get it populated to all these different areas. I'm going to suggest that we go about this in an orderly fashion and try to concentrate our efforts in certain areas. As an example, I recommend we do the United States and Canada first, partly because Live ATC has a lot of content in that area and it's fairly easily to put it together. That said, I don't mind if you want to go off and start in Europe or whatever, but just keep in mind that when I ultimately put the production files together with the plugin, I'm not going to release them for these other regions until we get at least a reasonable number, because frankly the experience is pretty bad if all you have is 4 or 5 files for each controller within that region. That said, you will have access to everything that's been submitted, so you can grab them. I'm just saying in the final product I won't include these other regions until we get at least a reasonable amount of critical mass in them. So let's just open up the United States and see how that's organized. Now I followed the directory tree the same as what Pilot to ATC likes to see, and the goal being that you can just copy these and drop them into the Pilot to ATC chatter directory or sound directory, and you'll be able to just use them within Pilot to ATC. So if we look inside controllers, it's now broken down into the various controller types. There's approach, clearance, center, departure, Okay, then there's departure ground, departure tower, departure unicom, and destination ground, destination tower, and destination unicom. And the idea between these departure grounds and destination grounds and so on is primarily that if you're in the simulator and you start off at a particular airport and you're tuned to a ground frequency, what you prefer to do is when you ultimately arrive at your destination, you don't want to hear the same voices. So the general goal is that, let's say as an example, if you collect a bunch of files, let's say for instance Denver ground, K-Denver, and you happen to be working on that recording from live ATC, maybe what you do is you put all of your Denver ground clips into departure, and then maybe you go over to Atlanta and get a bunch of Atlanta ground recordings and you edit them. I would recommend what you try to do is try to mix them up a little bit, that as you're working on them, put some of them from some airports in departure and put some of them from other airports in destination, and just keep it so it's kind of mixed up a little bit. That way as you're flying and you leave one airport and you go to another one, chances are you're not going to end up hearing the same control over and over again. Hopefully if we have enough files in here, you won't run into that problem anyways, but it's a general good practice. So let's, as an example, go over here to departure ground, and I have a number of files in here. Now, what I've been doing, and what I will recommend you do, is that you prefix all of your files with a 3-letter prefix. I'm using my initials, and I recommend that maybe you try to do the same thing. When you email me your Google Drive email account, at the same time I want you to also tell me what 3-letter prefix you're going to use for your files. And hopefully if you don't have a conflict with somebody else that's volunteering, if you do, I'll email you back and say, can you pick a different 3? The idea being here is that as you do your submissions, I want to make sure that none of your files are going to conflict, okay, with anybody else's, and that 3-letter prefix, okay, will help to do that. You'll also notice that my naming convention I've been using is just starting off with like 100, then 101, then 102, then 103. The main thing here is to keep your clips in numerical order. And the advantage to that is, let's say as an example, you are editing a recording file from, let's say, Denver. As you work through that file, you may very well get clips, okay, from one exchange from ATC, okay, to the pilot, maybe telling them how to taxi, and then throughout that recording you get a couple of other taxi instructions, and then ultimately that same aircraft gets handed off, okay, to the tower. What would be really nice is if you're keeping them in a numerical order, they'll get played back in that numerical order. If you were to just randomly pick numbers here, then the problem you have is how would Pilot to ATC, or for that matter a playback plugin, it would not know what order, okay, to play them back in. So again, my recommendation is when you create them, put your 3-letter prefix, start with a number, and it doesn't have to be 100, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4. The main thing is as you're creating clips within a directory, one directory like departure ground or destination ground or departure tower or whatever, just keep this numerical sequence so that for the most part the numerical sequence is representative of the time span, okay, that you're pulling things out of a recording, okay. And maybe we can just take a listen to one of these. So I'll click on this, and I should be able to come in here and say play with Windows Media Player.
And AC 5407, we're turning north here at ramp 4, and we got information uniform.
AC 5407, we're on way 26 left, taxi via Foxtrot.
26 left via Foxtrot, AC 5407.
Okay, as you could hear there, that was a complete exchange between ATC and the pilot, and that's what you want to try to get, okay, is a full exchange. I recommend not trying to combine multiple exchanges between different aircraft and pilots. Try to keep it to that one exchange, and the reason being is that Pilot to ATC, as well as the playback plugin that I'm going to do, what it's going to allow you to do is program a amount of delay that you want between these clips. Say for instance you might say, I want to have the delay randomized between 15 seconds and 20 seconds. And the way Pilot ATC in this plugin will work is once it's played a recording, it will delay for some random amount of time up to that limit that you specify, and then it will play the next one. If you string a bunch of them together into one big long thing, then what ends up happening is it just keeps playing them. And it doesn't know where, the playback doesn't know where to pause them in between. And that, frankly, can be a little bit of a challenge, particularly for something like Pilot ATC, where it's got a complete voice-activated ATC system. You want to have pauses in between so that you could speak, to the controller and get a response back. So break them up into that complete exchange. Let's listen to another one here.
Ground Delta 2864 is on the Victor loop for ramp 2.
So the 2864 on the ground, join Foxtrot, taxi to the ramp.
Foxtrot to the ramp for 2864.
All right, so that kind of gives you an example. And you can drag down these samples, you can listen to them and get a sense of how I did them. And this directory structure is pretty much the same way that we're going to use it. Now, if we come back over here, to Google Drive, let's actually bring down this template tree. We'll download that, and it's down. We'll come back over here to the downloads, and I'm just going to unzip this. And I'm going to bring it right into this other directory here called template tree. If you'd open it up, you're going to see the full structure. There's ATC Chatter. There is your regions. Within the regions, you've got your controllers, and then you got your different types of controllers. And as you can see here, it's empty. So as you are editing and capturing your clips, this is where you're going to save them. And again, I recommend what you do is you're going to see this in a minute, because I'm actually going to go up to Live ATC, pull down some files, and do some things. But what you do is, maybe go get a half an hour or an hour's worth of stuff from a particular facility type, whether that be ground or a center facility or whatever, and work on them and start to populate these up. You can concentrate purely on tower stuff if you want. You could concentrate on ground. You can concentrate on center. Whatever you want to do. The main thing is that before I give you access, to everything that's been collected and done by everybody else, I want you to give me at least 100, good files, that are high quality, well edited, and sound really good. Okay, and once you populated this tree, and I'll show you at the end here, you're just going to zip it up and you're going to submit it up to the drag it up and put it up into the submissions folder, and then send me an email that it's there, and I'll copy it and I'll include it in with all the other production files. Okay, so let's now come on over here and let's go to Live ATC and actually see how we do this. Okay. So I'm going to go over here to liveatc.net. And by the way, I do recommend you read up on liveatc.net. It's really, kind of an interesting community. What you've actually got here is a bunch of volunteers that have got radio scanners, and these volunteers happen to live kind of close to an airport. And what they do is they basically keep those scanners on all the time, and through some software hookups, they're able to send these feeds directly into Live ATC. So Live ATC is completely done with a volunteer network of people that like to listen to Live ATC. I actually went out and bought myself a little $20 software radio. It's a little USB dongle that you can hook up to an antenna, and it's a software programmable radio, and I was actually able to listen to ATC in my area. Now, one challenge I've got is I don't live very close to the airport, so the reception's a little spotty. If you happen to live close to an airport and you kind of have line of sight, to their to the towers, like their ground frequencies and the other things like that, you might actually want to consider helping these guys out. It's actually a lot of fun. Okay, but you do have to live close to the airport, typically within 5 miles, and preferably have a pretty good line of sight, like maybe you're up a little higher than the airport, that type of thing. Okay, so I digress a little bit and give a little bit of a plug for Live ATC. So you can browse around. You can look at all these different things. What I'm going to do is go right into this and go to Atlanta. So I'm going to type in KATL. And what you're going to see is all the different things I can hear for Atlanta. So here I've got Atlanta approach. Here's Atlanta ATIS. We're not going to bother recording that because you kind of get that automatically. There's clearance, departure, ground, some other various grounds. We have ground, which is going to be different runways that you can listen to. You got the ramp, tower, so you pretty much got the full gambit of things here. Okay, and in some cases, you actually have things that get grouped together. So if I look at ATL ground here, these audio archives, it's actually ground for all of these runways that are merged together, versus maybe coming down here and just grabbing some different ones. So what I could do right now is I could listen to this right at the moment and kind of get a sense of how it sounds.
Delta 39, 2 North Tango.
Delta 39, ground, number 8 right. Taxi straight out via hotel. You'll follow that 737 on Foxtrot.
Alright, straight out via the hotel, we'll follow 73 Delta 39.
Okay, so one of the reasons why you might want to preview these as you're looking around is depending on the volunteer who is doing the stream from that particular facility, depending on how close they are to the airport, how good their antennas are, and that is going to depend a lot on what the quality of the recording is. I mean, you're going to find as you go on live atc.net, you're going to have a lot of variation. I recommend hunting around and trying to find a facility that the volunteers got a pretty good reception. Some amount of static, adds a little bit of realism to what we're trying to do here. But frankly, I found, particularly when I'm on Pilot to ATC, trying to listen to ATC Chatter that's got a lot of static, or the volume levels are really different between the controller and the pilot, it's actually a little annoying. So maybe it's just my personal preference. I prefer to try to find a facility that's got a pretty good quality recording. And by doing the live listening, you can get a sense of how it's going to sound. So I like the way that sounded. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to the archives. And I'll go back one day, okay, because I know that you can go back to like Wednesday or whatever. We'll pick Wednesday. Now, all of the archives, they're done in 30-minute clips, and they're all based on Zulu time, which is basically Greenwich Mean Time. So I think right now that's roughly, it's either 4 or 5 hours, okay, ahead of us. So I know with Atlanta, they'll be pretty busy in the middle of the morning. So if I come in here and I pick like, I don't know, maybe 1400 Zulu, I know I'm going to get a clip, okay, that's got a fair amount of activity going on it. So I'll submit. I could play this right now, but I'm actually going to come in here and click on it.
Ground Delta 1563, we're joining Foxtrot here from Delta for ramp 1.
That sounds really good.
1560, Atlanta ground taxi, Foxtrot to ramp 1.
Fox to ramp 1, Delta.
So I'm going to download that. So that one's coming down. And all I'm going to do is come up here into the bar, and I'm then going to change it to 1430 Zulu and grab that one.
Got the side to the right, so we'll follow.
I'll download that one. I like to get, usually a couple of hours. I get like 4 of these. We'll go 1500 Zulu.
Ground Delta 2088, still number 2. Is this aircraft in front of
Download that one, and then I'll do 1530.
Southwest 634 is on Lima for RAM 3. Southwest 630.
Okay, so now I've got 4 of them. And if I come over here and I look at my downloads directory, you could see that I've got KATL from 1400, 1430, 1500, and 1530. Now, you could edit these files all individually. What I like to do is merge them together into one larger one. So I've got, quite a bit that I can work on. And frankly, if you get something with 2 hours worth of stuff in here, you may actually want to work on that over a couple of days, because the process of doing this editing, it can be a little tedious. Once you get good at it, you could probably knock off, 1 to 2 clips a minute. But initially when you start doing it, it takes a little bit of effort. So again, I like to merge them together. So I'm just going to bring up a DOS box here so that I can type in a DOS command. I'm going to come over to my downloads directory. If I do a dir, here's my KATL MP3 files. And there's a cool little DOS command here that we can do that'll merge them together into one. So copy /B for binary, KATL star.mp3, which will grab all of those. And then I'm going to put them into a file which I'll call Atlanta-ground.mp3. And this has merged them all over there. So now if I come over here, you'll see that I've got this one larger file. It's 14 megabytes, which is basically these 4 files merged into one. Once I've got it like this, you can delete these because you don't really need them anymore at that point, so I'll get rid of them. And this is the file I'm going to work on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up into Audacity. Right-click, open with Audacity. Now, if you look at this, you're going to see that there's places where there's some pretty big breaks, okay, in things. And if we actually zoom in here a little bit, you can see you get a fair amount of these breaks throughout here. Now, Atlanta's a very busy airport, so once they kind of get going, I would say that ground feed is cooking at all times. If you were to do something like a CTAF frequency, or maybe something like clearance delivery, where the amount of activity on it is lower, you're going to get more and more of these gaps in here. And frankly, it can get a little bit tedious having to slew forward and find them. So what I like to do is actually use a little capability within here. I'm going to zoom out a bit here. Within Audacity that allows you to basically get rid of silence, or take any large gaps in silence and bring them down to make maybe just a 1 second interval. So under Effect, you come in here and there's this thing called Truncate Silence. What you have to do is detect silence. So anything that's less than negative 35 dB is going to be considered silence. If its duration is greater than 1 second, I want it to truncate data down to 1 second. Okay, you can do things like compress it to like a certain percentage of it, but I like to basically get it down to 1 second intervals. That actually helps you a little bit when you've got a ATC to pilot back and forth interaction. At least what it does is it keeps the reply down to 1 second, just in case the pilot or the controller gets a little distracted, they don't answer right away. You don't end up with this big gap between the time that ATC gives instructions and the pilot responds, or vice versa. So I'm just going to go ahead and press OK. And what it should do is collapse these gaps down to something a lot less. And you'll have to experiment with this. Sometimes you might have to fuss a little bit with what that dB setting is for what's detecting a silence. But you can see this compressed it down quite a bit. Now what we're going to do is zoom in here a little bit, and go all the way back to the beginning of the file so that we can see it. Now, right out of the chute, I'm going to tell you, I have a bunch of shortcuts I've programmed on my keyboard here that you can program within Audacity, so that you don't have to keep clicking on these zoom in, zoom out, copy, paste type buttons, I find that once you get good at this and you have your keyboard set up, you can work pretty fast. So now what you're going to do is just start playing these and listening for ones that you want to capture.
Ground out to 1563. We're joining Foxtrot here from Delta for ramp 1.
Delta 1560, Atlanta ground taxi, Foxtrot to ramp 1.
Fox to ramp 1, Delta 1563.
Okay, so this one sounds pretty good. Let's just listen to it again. We can actually highlight it here. Maybe zoom in a little bit.
Ground out to 1563. We're joining Foxtrot here from Delta for ramp 1.
Delta 1560, Atlanta ground taxi, Foxtrot to ramp 1.
Fox to ramp 1, Delta 1563.
Okay, so this one sounds pretty good. And you'll notice that the audio levels, for both the controller and the pilot are pretty close to each other. if you wanted to, you could boost this one up a little bit, but I think it's close enough that you don't need to do that. And this would be good. Now, the one challenge with this is that when you listen to the controller here, you're going to notice that they said the word Atlanta.
Delta 1560 Atlanta ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1.
What we generally want to try to do with these clips is edit out any real hard location specific stuff, like things like Boston Tower, Atlanta ground, Oakland Center. If it's at Oakland Center, you want to try to get rid of the word Oakland and just have center. And the reason for this is that if you've got clips from within a particular region, you should generally be able to play those clips within any region at any airport, and it will be close enough. Yes, you might be referring to taxiways that are not at the airport that you're at. You may very well be referring to runways that you don't have, or frankly even runways that match, but they're not the active ones. We would need literally tens of thousands of files, okay, that were classified very specifically to get it so that the playback things were that smart. We're never going to get to that. So generally what I try to do is just get it down to a region and then try to edit out those words in there that are very specific. And it's mostly things like Atlanta ground, Boston Tower, get rid of the Boston, Oakland Center, get rid of the word Oakland, that type of thing, okay? Airline call signs are perfectly fine. Yes, you may be at an airport and hearing a bunch of Delta flights, and Delta doesn't fly in there. It's not. We're not going to be able to get to perfection here, but at least getting some of the location-specific stuff out seems to help. Now, I will be very honest with you. It gets a little bit challenging if the controller speaks very quickly, okay, because they tend to merge Atlanta ground together, and it gets a little hard to figure out exactly where it is. But I'm going to try to edit this one and see if I can't get it really good. So first thing I'm going to do is zoom in a bit on this, because if you zoom in, you can see better where the Atlanta is.
Delta 1560 Atlanta ground taxi Foxtrot. Delta 1560 Atlanta ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1.
So it sounds like it's right in here. Let's just play this clip back.
Atlanta. 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 Ground.
Okay, so that's ground. I think right in here is Atlanta.
Atlanta.
It is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out, okay? And then what you do is play the whole clip back and see how it sounds.
Delta 1560 ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1. Delta 1560 ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1. Delta 1560 ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1.
Okay, let's listen to this a little bit closer.
Ground. 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 Delta 1560 ground. Delta 1560 ground. Delta 1560 ground.
I'm going to try to cut that out.
Delta 1560 ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1. Delta 1560 ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1.
Okay, so that's not perfect. I could fuss with it some more. Sometimes, to be very honest with you, you actually might want to, try to pick a clip where it's not quite that mashed together. But I think you get the general sense of how this works. So what I'm going to do is zoom out here a little bit, get the whole section and listen to it.
Ground Delta 1563, we're joining Foxtrot here from Delta for ramp 1.
Delta 1560 ground taxi Foxtrot ramp 1.
Fox to ramp 1, Delta 1563.
All right, so that sounds pretty good. And again, I think that if I worked on this a little bit better, or maybe I picked a section, okay, that didn't have the words Atlanta and ground mashed together quite so bad, I could probably, get this to be even higher quality. But I think you get the general idea of what we're trying to do. And I have found, frankly, that trying to find recordings where the controller is a slower speaker really makes a big difference. Some of these controllers, they really get rattling away, okay, with the speed at which they speak. And some of them, frankly, don't even bother putting things in like Atlanta ground. They'll just say ground. So if you poke around You look, even within a particular facility like Denver or Atlanta, if you pick a different day, you'll get a different controller, whole different way that they do things. So I highly recommend when you find a time period, okay, with a controller and the audio is good and whatever, grab that one and work the heck out of it, okay, because it'll make your life a lot easier if you can find something where you don't have to do too much editing, okay, with these things. I happen to pick one here where this person speaks a little fast. I might ultimately say if it's constantly like that, okay, this might be a bigger pain in the neck than it's worth to use this particular file. But anyways, once you've got it highlighted, all you do is come in and you say File, and what you're going to do is you're going to export selected audio. Okay, and then what you're going to do is we're going to come in here, and I'll just go right here to this chatter template, United States, controllers, and I'm going to pick departure ground. You either pick departure or you could put destination ground. Doesn't matter. Just remember, as I said, that try to mix it up. You know, try to make sure that what you try to do in your between your departure grounds and destination grounds, I would recommend that you make those recordings be from 2 different airports, okay, just so that you're less likely that if you leave and go to another one, you don't end up picking up the same controller or the same references, okay, to taxiways and things of that nature. So click on this, and I'm going to give it a name, MXE-401, okay, .mp3. Now this is important. It's going to come up and ask you to edit the meta tag information. Please don't change this. Frankly, I'm not even sure if it's going to let me change it, okay? But it's important for my license agreement with liveatc.net that I protect their content. So what I want to make sure of is that in any of these resulting MP3 files, this artist name, okay, is in there. And in all honesty, if we leave it like this, there may actually be some things that the pilot to ATC developer or I can do, or down the road, we can actually pick up, okay, this 4-character ICO code and things like ground and stuff like that, and we actually might be able to do a little bit more with being selective. Say as an example, if I know that you're flying to Atlanta and you're sitting in Atlanta, if we have thousands of these files, I might be able to do things like prioritize picking up the KATL ground clips because I can read the tag information. So whatever you do, don't change it, okay? Leave it the way it is, just the way you see it, and make sure that it is in there, okay? I actually won't be able to accept any MP3 files for you that don't have this in the tag information as I'm going to need it. And then just save it, and just to prove to you that it really went there, if we come in here and we go to the tree, United States, controllers, there's my file, and I should be able to play it.
Ground down to 1563. We're joining Foxtrot here from Delta for ramp 1.
Delta 1563, ground taxi Foxtrot to ramp 1.
Fox to ramp 1 down to 1563.
Okay, and we got a complete clip, okay? Now what I'm going to do is, now what I like to do is now that I've got this one, I'm just going to come in and cut this entire clip out so I don't run into it again, right? So I know that one's done. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit, and let's listen for another one.
5 short of uniform. 1905, whether your sequence is coming down now, just follow the opposite direction, 737, the person. 7 Delta 1905. Delta 339, go ahead and continue out, monitor time 13185.
339, continue on out, go to tower, guys.
That 1905 and sequence with that first opposite direction, 7.
Now you notice that this is a different controller. You'll find this quite a bit, okay, where you may very well have multiple ground frequencies, different controllers, okay, handling different sections of the airport. And typically, the way these volunteers do it is they've got their scanner set up so they're actually monitoring multiple frequencies, and then they just, you know, kind of collapse them and merge them into one. So sometimes what you might want to do is just move around here and find clips that you like the way they sound.
531 Atlanta ground, remain 9 left at Mike 2, turn right on Lima, then make a left turn on uniform.
Yeah, let's see, how's this one sound?
Delta 575, monitor on 125.32.
2532, Delta 575, good day.
See, now that one's nice. Let's just highlight this one here. We'll zoom in a bit.
Delta 575, monitor on 125.32.
2532, Delta 575, good day.
Now what's nice about this is I don't have any reference to Atlanta in there. Quality sounds really good. Volume is roughly about the same, okay, on both the controller or whatever. This is a good one, okay, to just, I don't have to do any editing on it. So sometimes it's worth it to just listen a little bit, find the ones you like. I mean, you know, in this example, we've got 4 hours worth of stuff here, okay? Sometimes it's easier to find one you like than to bother fussing with one that sounds crappy or the editing is going to be a pain in the neck on it, okay? So here's another one. I highlight it, and I'm just going to come up here and say File, Export Selected Audio. It just so happens that it remembers the directory, so I'm just going to click on that, and I'm going to change it to 402. Make sure you've got the artist name in here that hasn't lost it, and copy it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to come in here and just highlight that plus everything to the beginning. And I'm going to cut it so I don't run into it again. And you just proceed on like that. Let me zoom out here a little bit.
Ground Scout 4796 coming up on 5 north for taxi.
Scout 4796, Atlanta ground, runway 8 right, taxi via Echo Oscar current.
Taxi via Echo to 8 right, we'll get current 80 Scout 4796.
Thanks.
Ground LD 1190 is 2 north with Oscar.
Delta 1190, Atlanta ground, runway 8 right, taxi via right turn on Foxtrot, and at ramp 3, join Echo behind a CRJ 200.
All right, 8 right, Foxtrot, ramp 3, Echo behind a CRJ 200, Delta 1190.
44.
So that one's kind of an interesting one, right? It's nice and long.
Ground LD 1190 is 2 north with Oscar.
Delta 1190, Atlanta ground, runway 8 right, taxi via right turn.
All right, this one's a nice one, okay? We're going to have to do some editing on it, but you notice that the controller said Atlanta kind of slowly, so we might be able to see it a little bit closer. So let's zoom in here a bit. Listen to it again.
Ground LD 1190 is 2 north with Oscar.
Delta 1190, Atlanta ground, runway
So it's right in here.
Atlanta.
I think that's it. So if I just cut that out, let's see how that sounds.
Delta 1190, ground, runway 8 right, taxi via right turn on Foxtrot, and at
So that sounds pretty darn good. So let's zoom out a little bit here, and let's get the whole shebang. Trying to remember where it goes to.
Ground LD 1190 is 2 north with Oscar.
Delta 1190, ground, runway 8 right, taxi via right turn on Foxtrot, and at ramp 3, join Echo behind a CRJ 200.
All right, 8 right, Foxtrot, ramp 3, Echo behind a CRJ 200, Delta 1190.
All right, that sounds good. So we're going to take all of this. You can listen to it again if you want.
Ground LD 11.
Yep, I got it. Export selected audio, and again, we're just going to go in order here. 403. Make sure that the artist name and track is in there. Press OK. And get rid of it. So I think you get a sense of how this all works. Okay, you just kind of go through them, and again, my recommendation is that you find a file that sounds really good, particularly maybe with some controllers that speak a little bit slower. Quality is good, the level is good for each of the different areas, and then just work through it. Now here's another thing I want to show you here. If we take a look at this, let me just listen to this.
531, you're going to be in front of that Sky Team, Delta Jet, and you can monitor them with the 3.5.
Copy 2385, Delta 531.
Okay, so if you listen here, the pilot response, the volume was a little lower, right? Now that wasn't too bad, but if you wanted to boost this up, you could highlight it.
Copy 2385, Delta 531.
You go to Effect, and there's a thing here called Leveler, and what you do is simply determine the amount of leveling, and you can actually preview it.
Copy 2385, Delta 531.
That's not bad. Maybe I go heavier.
2385 Delta 531.
I like that. And I'm going to say OK. And you'll see that if I now listen to this whole thing.
Delta 531, you're going to be in front of that Sky Team, Delta Jet, and you can monitor them with the 3.5.
Copy 2385 Delta 531.
All right, so I wanted to show you that too, because you might actually have a real good clip that you like, but the pilot's voice tends to be a little bit lower. And this happens sometimes, okay, when you'll find this frankly more often, okay, like on a tower where the plane is further away from the scanner, okay, than the actual antenna for the tower controller or whatever. And you might want to have to boost it up a little bit. You don't have to do it too often. And again, if the clip doesn't sound good or it's too noisy, just move on to finding another one. Okay, if you generally get a pretty high quality source file from liveatc.net, you'll find that if you get a good one with a slow speaking controller, you could move through and get a lot of clips, okay, fairly quickly. To the point where you could probably knock off a good 2 or 3 sometimes a minute, okay, once you get going. So that gives you a sense of of how this all works. Now what I want to do is we've got a couple of files. I would recommend you work through this. Once you get 100 or so, go ahead and zip it up and submit it up to me. If you're first starting on this and you want some feedback, maybe what you do is zip up a small number, send them up, send me an email notification. I'll look at them and review them and give you any feedback if you need to correct anything before you spend a lot of time doing something that I can't accept because it doesn't sound right. Okay, so I'm going to shut down Audacity here now. Oh, and by the way, here's one last thing. You may not want to work all day straight on this 4-hour file, okay? You'll notice that what I've been doing is that as I've captured clips, I've deleted the ones I've captured or deleted anything before it that I wasn't going to use. I can come in here now and simply export the audio for this whole thing. And if I come back up here to downloads, I can simply overwrite this Atlanta ground file, which is my source. Okay, and again, make sure it keeps that. And now it's going to extract everything that I've got left, okay, that I haven't done yet. And this allows you, frankly, that you could capture the files and you could work on it over a few hours, maybe even a few days, and not have to go up and get another one off of liveatc.net or another set. Okay, so that's saved. Let's close down Audacity. I'm going to say no because I already saved it. Let's close down this. And now what I want to do is show you how to zip up and submit these. So I'm going to go to Downloads. Here I've got my template tree. And what I would say is, do it at this level, I think. And if we just simply say zip this, actually, let's go back up here. Let's just take this, we'll zip this whole thing up because it doesn't really matter. We'll add this, okay, to, well, probably what I need to do is, let me just rename this. It's probably the easiest way to do this. I'll call this MXE Submission 1. Okay? I'm just going to go to 7-zip and I'm going to say add this to MXE Submission 1. So now I've got my 2 files, complete with the directory structure and everything in there. And now I'm just going to come over here to Google Drive and I'm going to upload it. Go to, where is it here? Google Drive. Go to Shared with Me. And you want to go to the Chatter Submissions folder. And then it says drop files here or use the new button. Let's see, where is that new button? Right up here. New. File upload. And here it is, MXE submission 1.zip. And the upload's complete. And then when you've done that, just send me an email I actually may get a notification of this, but just to be sure, send me email to mark@stickandrudderstudios.com. Let me know that you've pushed something up there. I will go and I'll grab it. I'll unzip it. I'll review it. Make sure that everything sounds pretty good. I'll add it to the collection, probably do some leveling on it to make sure that your MP3 files generally have roughly the same volume as everybody else's, so that there's not a wide variation between what people are submitting. And if you've given me 100 of them that sound really good and I can accept, what I will do is I will add your email address to the shared mode for the production files, and I'll send an email back. And then what you can do is you can drag down all of the collected production files up to that point. And I'll also keep track of anytime new people add stuff. When there's new files to be had, I'll let everybody know who is an active contributor that we have some new files in the production environment. So that's pretty much how you go about doing it. Don't hesitate to send me any questions that you've got in email, or if you want me to check some of your work ahead of time before you go too far down the road, I'd be happy to do that. And I really look forward to working with all of you on this. Thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to your submissions.